Death at Bishop's Keep. Chapter 38. Having taken pains to obtain and compare abundant evidence on this subject, I should say that the majority of women, happily for them, are not very much troubled with sexual feelings of any kind. As a general rule, a modest woman seldom desires any sexual gratification for herself. She submits to her husband, but only to please him, and but for the desire of maternity would far rather be relieved from his attentions. William Acton, The Functions and Disorders of the Reproductive System, 1884. I'm very glad we were able to spend this time together, dear Kate, Eleanor Marston said, tucking her hand into Kate's arm as they walked along the path to the small lake at the foot of the garden. She turned to look into Kate's face. I may call you Kate, mayn't I? It is more a friendly name than Catherine. She reached up to a smooth and escaped lock of Kate's hair. Her eyes danced. And you look like a Kate, with that red hair all fly away and the pink in your cheeks, which I warrant is not paint. Hardly, Kate laughed. I will be Kate to you, she said, if you will be Ellie to me. She was glad, too, for the chance to be with Eleanor, and to get away for a few moments from the poisonous atmosphere of the house where above stairs and below everything seemed terribly out of kilter. Aunt Sabrina and Aunt Jaggers had obviously quarrelled very badly. Maud's face was anxiously sombre when he took the account books in to Aunt Sabrina a little while ago, and Mrs. Pratt, preparing the luncheon in the kitchen, was sullen and unspeaking, with an angry, brooding look. It's a bargain, Eleanor exclaimed, spiritedly holding Kate's arm closer. I already feel, you know, as if I have found another dear sister, she added with an artless smile. A dear older sister one who has seen something of the world and can give me the very best advice. Kate smiled a little. She could understand that Eleanor might view her as much older, although the difference in years was probably not much more than 5 or 6. There was a marked difference in their manners. Eleanor was gay, exuberant, even girlish, although Kate was well enough acquainted with her by now to suspect that her constant smile and vivacious glances covered deeper feelings that could not be shared with her family or her society friends, feelings so deep and perhaps so at odds with those she was expected to have that Eleanor herself was not even fully aware of them. Kate, on the other hand, knew her own temperament to be far more reserved and thoughtful. It was perhaps the sober reserve that attracted Eleanor to her and made her feel as if her confidences would be honoured with respectful consideration. Eleanor twirled a pale blue ruffled parasol that exactly matched her lavishly trimmed dress, with its wrists and high neck frosted with French lace. I bring Patsy's regrets, she said, and then added, but I must confess that I encouraged her to go to London with Mamma this morning, so that you and I could have this time alone. I hope your luncheon plan will not be upset by having 3 guests instead of 4. Not at all, Kate said. Bradford and Sir Charles will arrive in time for luncheon. Kate was still not accustomed to the late luncheon hour. The meal was never eaten until after 1, and when the guests were expected, it was even later. Yes, Eleanor said. They turned a corner in the path and came out on the grassy shore. She waved her hand carelessly. They have gone to Colchester, Bradford on some stuffy errand having to do with money, and Charles to do more of his detecting. Ah, yes, Kate said thoughtfully, his murder. She wondered if Sir Charles had taken her suggestion about interviewing Mrs. Farnsworth. She regretted it now. On reflection, she felt it would have been better not to have spoken about it at all. What a lovely brooch, she said, changing the subject. She lifted her finger to touch it, a flashing diamond in a circlet of pearls. A gift? Eleanor nodded. From Mr. Farley, she said. Was there a heavy note in her voice? I'm sure you're excited, Kate said, watching him. The 2 months before the wedding must seem to stretch out like an eternity. Yes, Eleanor said. Yes, her voice definitely held a lower tone, and her glance, not so gay or flashing now, was downcast and coloured with something like embarrassment, or perhaps even shame. Ellie, Kate said quietly, if you would like to speak to me about anything that troubled you. Eleanor clasped Kate's hand. Oh, Kate, she exclaimed in a shaking voice. I would. My dear Ellie, Kate said with genuine sympathy. What is it? Eleanor released Kate's hand and turned her face away. She bit her lip nervously, and then turned to face Kate. I want to know, if you know, dear Kate, about the wedding night. Kate stared at her. The wedding night? I have asked Mamma, Eleanor said, but the quiver in her voice barely in check. But all she will tell me is that I must do my duty. She will not tell me what my duty is, except that I must please Mr. Fairley. How can I please my husband if I have no idea how to do so? Kate felt herself very much at sea on this subject, but she took a deep breath and embarked upon the deep, asking her friend the same question she would ask herself in the circumstance. Can you not allow your natural feelings to be your guide? My feelings, Eleanor said blankly. But that is what I am asking you, Kate. What ought my feelings to be? Kate tried a different approach. Well then, can you not trust Mr. Fairley? He is a widower, or is he not, with experience in such matters? Of course, as Kate understood it, all men had experience. That was an essential part of their freedom, to have as many mistresses as they chose. Her thoughts flashed unbidden to Charles. How many mistresses had he had? Eleanor began to pace along the walk, her steps agitated. That is another of my concerns, Kate. Having been married, Mr. Farley has experience, vast experience. Will he not expect far more of me than I am able to offer? Her face was suffused with pink, and she spoke with an effort. But she continued to speak without waiting for an answer, her passion testifying to the force of her dammed-up feelings. While I can scarcely imagine what the act must be like, it seems so brutal, so unnatural. She closed her eyes, the pink paling, her voice falling to a frightened whisper. So painful. Kate could feel Eleanor's fear. I wish, she said quietly, that I could reassure you out of my own experience. Eleanor's eyes opened and she stared at Kate. Oh, my dearest, you cannot think that I believe you to have. Her hand went to her horrified mouth. Just because you are American and Irish. Kate laughed and took her friend's hand. Well, if you did believe me to be experienced, I must unfortunately disappoint you, Ellie. The truth is that I have never kissed a man with passion. You are far beyond me in that, and are likely to remain so. You will be my teacher, and tell me what it is like. Eleanor's color came again, and she shook her head vehemently. Oh no, Kate, you are wrong. I have kissed Mr. Fairley, yes, but modestly, and only once when I gave him my sacred word that I would marry him. But not with passion. My mother says that no good woman ever... Kate turned to face her friend. Eleanor Marston, you must forget your mother, she exclaimed. You will shortly vow yourself, body and soul, until death to Mr. Fairley. You cannot do such a thing without even tasting his kiss. She seized Ellie's other hand and gave them both a shake. Promise me, Ellie, the next time you are with Mr. Fairley, you will kiss him. And then the next thing, and then the next after that, will seem less dreadful. Eleanor's eyes were wide and very blue. Do you really believe that a kiss will set my fears at rest? I cannot swear to that, Kate said, wishing she knew more about Mr. Fairley and what lay in his heart toward Eleanor. But she squeezed Ellie's hands as she dropped them and managed to smile. But you might find it enjoyable, and when you have kissed him, you can tell me what it is like, so that I will know too. Again, unbidden, Sir Charles's face came into her mind. Eleanor turned and they began to walk again. Thank you, Kate, she said, subdued. If you think it would help, I will try. There was a silence, and then she picked up her pace. Her voice took on a more determined cheerfulness. There are so many things to do. I am to have final fittings for my trousseau at Worth's next week. And there are yet shoes to be bought and gifts for the wedding party and flowers to be arranged and... Ellie, Kate said, do you love him? Love Mr. Fairley? Eleanor's laugh was quick and nervous. Why, of course I love him. Don't be silly. At any rate, it is a very good match. Mamma and Papa are ecstatic, and all my friends are envious. Why do you ask? Because, Kate said soberly, remembering the long relationship between her aunt and uncle, marriage is at its best difficult. Unless there is love to leave in it, it is a flat, hard loaf. It is not a loaf to relish, nor will it nourish. Eleanor stared at her. Why, Kate, you are a poet at heart, I swear, a philosopher, a romantic. I fear that I am a romantic, Kate said with a wry smile. At least where marriage is concerned. I will never marry for less than love, which means, I suppose, she added, that I will never marry. She stopped, struck suddenly with the realization that she was, truly and deeply, a romantic. Eleanor, on the other hand, was profoundly pragmatic. She accepted her social responsibilities and did what was set before her to do without question. Whatever her heart might whisper in the dark of the night, she would go on playing the role she had been trained since birth to play. Not marry, Eleanor exclaimed in amazement. "Be forever a spinster!" She tilted her pretty head, frowning. "You must be one of those free-thinking women who reject men's control and want the vote." Kate picked up a small flat rock, and threw it, as her boy cousins had taught her to do a long time ago, across the open water. It skipped 4 times perfectly, then settled with a splash among the lily pads on the other side. A startled swan, coal-black, raised its elegant head as if to question. With a satisfaction far out of proportion to the mere achievement of rock-skipping, Kate watched the circles widen in the still water, interlacing with one another, a series of rippling rings. And then finally she spoke. "You're right," she said. "I'm too independent ever to allow a man to dictate my beliefs and my behavior. I could never be less than an equal partner. As for the vote, I plead guilty to trusting my opinions as confidently as those of most men." She turned back to Eleanor with a small smile. "And not only that, but I confess to believing that I could responsibly hold office." Eleanor's mouth forgot for a moment its practiced smile, and a certain wistfulness came into her expression. "Oh, Kate, such self-assurance! If only I had your ability to face the future undaunted. Perhaps then I should—" She stopped, considering the choices she might exercise. And then, to Kate's regret, her face lost its seriousness and her gay smile returned. "But you had best not confide your political ambitions to Bradford, and most especially not to Sir Charles. I fear that they would both be terribly annoyed." "Or terribly frightened," Kate said thoughtfully. "I feel sympathy for them. It must be very difficult for one entire sex to contemplate the changes in the world these days. Women campaigning for suffrage, choosing their own marriages, earning their own livings." Eleanor took Kate's arm and turned them back towards the house. "I admire the sentiment of independence and those who are bold enough to express it," she said. "But I must also confess to enjoying the comfort of being cared for and the luxury of being loved by someone who can afford it. I dare say Mamma is right when she says that a large income is the best recipe for happiness." She trilled a happy laugh. "Now, we had best go back, do you think? Bradford and Sir Charles will be right along." "Of course," Kate said dryly. "We must not keep the men waiting."